Hello, my wonderful friends. Welcome back to Malicious Compliance, the place where people follow instructions to the letter, usually just to spite someone. In today's episode, we'll meet arrogant parents, entitled customers, and one OP who gave a new business owner a lesson he'll never forget. I hope you enjoy these stories. Try not to shake your heads too hard. As always, if you'd like your post featured, you can send or link it through the email below. Now let's dive in. Music. This first story isn't mine. It happened to my neighbor, whom we'll call Tom. Tom works as a maintenance supervisor at a large hunting and sporting goods store here in Tennessee. Because the store has been running short-staffed, he sometimes gets stuck with tasks beneath his title, like cleaning bathrooms. On this particular evening, the store was slammed with customers. Tom had to wait a full 35 minutes for the women's restroom to clear before he could get in. Women were complaining to management about the messy, understocked bathroom, yet they kept barging past him to use it. Finally, when the room emptied out, Tom wheeled his cart inside, blocked the door, and started cleaning. Counters, mirrors, surfaces, you know the drill. That's when he noticed all the stalls were completely out of toilet paper, which he planned to restock last. While working, he heard an impatient knock. A woman, let's call her Karen, demanded to be let in. Tom politely explained, "Sorry, ma'am, the restroom's temporarily closed for cleaning, but I'll be finished soon." Karen snapped back, "Well, I need to go right now. Get out." Tom replied, "The restroom doesn't currently meet our standards. It's dirty and out of supplies. I need to—" But before he could finish, she cut him off. "That's not my problem. You'll be here all night anyway. Let me in." Trying to stay calm, Tom told her, "I just need to grab something real quick. I'll be done in a minute." He stepped out briefly to grab toilet paper from the supply closet next door, gone for maybe 10 seconds. When he returned, Karen had shoved his cart aside and was already inside. She barked, "I'm the customer. I'll use it now. You can finish later." So Tom shrugged and leaned against the wall. He didn't bother warning her about the missing toilet paper. 5 minutes later, a timid voice called out from inside. Excuse me, sir?" "Yes, ma'am," Tom answered. "There's no toilet paper in here," she admitted. "That's what I was trying to tell you," Tom said calmly. "It was the last thing I needed to restock." Here's where Tom's petty streak kicked in. Instead of handing her a roll, he went to the break room and asked a female coworker who was on break to deliver it. She took her sweet time, finishing her snack before strolling back with the roll. Karen had to sit there for 10 minutes waiting. Humiliated. Tom told me that moment of sweet justice made his entire awful night worthwhile. And honestly, Karen had it coming. Maybe next time she'll actually listen. Someone even commented later, "Better person than me, I would have just walked away." Now for story number 2. For the past decade, I've worked from home as an automation engineer at a small company that builds custom industrial gas treatment systems, things like chillers and compressor stations. My job? Programming PLCs, designing HMIs, and configuring SCADA data transfer. In simple terms, I told the machines what to do. The pay wasn't great, well below market, but I only had 4 or 5 projects a year, each lasting 2 to 3 weeks. That left me with plenty of downtime, so I didn't complain. Everything ran smoothly until a few years ago, when the original owner retired and sold the business. The new management brought in new policies, and plenty of headaches. In my country, workers are entitled to 4 weeks of paid vacation each year. Unused days roll over, but you must take at least 2 consecutive weeks annually. Because I had so much free time between projects, I usually only took those 2 weeks, slowly accumulating a big vacation balance. One of the new rules was that vacations had to be scheduled in advance. I chose the first 2 weeks of April. In March, just before my break, a manager asked me to travel for 3 days to help a struggling maintenance engineer with a project upload. Since they were short-staffed, I reluctantly agreed. What should have been a simple trip turned into a disaster. The engineer was incompetent, didn't understand the computer systems, and couldn't handle basic electrical work. I ended up doing everything myself, even though it wasn't my job. When I got back, I told my manager flat out, no more business trips. I wasn't paid enough to cover for their maintenance crew. Then, the first day of my vacation arrived. The phone rang. Emergency. We need you on another trip, just 1 week. I reminded him I was on vacation and had plans already booked. He brushed it off. Yeah, well, it is what it is. I'll send the project files. When I checked the files, I nearly laughed. The project was a disaster, unfinished, poorly designed, and impossible to complete in a week. I called back and told him so. He insisted anyway, threatening that the CEO would get involved. Sure enough, the CEO called me 15 minutes later. If you don't take this trip, write your resignation letter. So I did exactly that. I drafted my resignation with 2 weeks' notice, ending on April 14th. 1 day after my vacation ended, management called again, asking if I could at least finish the project before leaving. I told them, actually, I'm still on vacation until April 13th. My last day is the 14th, so no, I won't be touching it. The fallout? A former colleague recently told me the company's in chaos. Deadlines blown, clients furious, massive fines rolling in. Their accounts are frozen. Salaries haven't been paid in months, and bankruptcy is looming. Honestly, they brought it on themselves. And in my country, salary debts are prioritized in bankruptcy proceedings, so employees will still get paid eventually. Sweet compliance. The downside is that I still haven't received compensation for the 120 vacation days I saved up. So yes, things are basically done. And honestly, I've read so many posts like this, and I love them. It's the classic I'm irreplaceable move. I'd bet the CEO deeply regrets ever telling OP to resign if they wouldn't cover the extra work. Probably not the wisest thing to say to the one person holding the company together. They underestimated OP, pushed too hard, and now they're floundering without the very person who kept everything running smoothly. Honestly, they deserve the mess they're in. Anyway, that reminded me of something from a few months back. I'm a 33-year-old guy, and I usually handle cooking at home, including all the washing up afterwards. My wife, she's 34, rarely cooks. We established that by our second date years ago. I love her to bits, but she's a culinary disaster. Years of effort haven't improved her skills, so I've accepted that battle's lost. Here's how it usually goes. Once I finish work, I start chopping meat and vegetables, prepping anything marinated, and then cooking so dinner can be served hot. To me, it makes sense that meals should be eaten fresh, and cleanup can wait, especially since nobody else needs the kitchen during that time. After dinner, while my wife puts our toddler to bed, I wash everything: cutlery, prep tools, pots, and pans. I actually prefer this setup. It means I can do all the dishes in one go, and everyone gets to enjoy the meal together while it's still hot. I can't stand cleaning pots and pans mid-cooking before anyone's eaten. The problem? My wife doesn't like that. Every so often, while I'm cooking, she'll wander in and start complaining that I should pack things away, wash the cutting board while I wait for something to finish, and so on. The thing is, there isn't always downtime. Certain meals have to be served right away, especially when you've got a toddler's bedtime looming. Just to clarify, I do clean as I go when it's necessary. If I handle raw meat, I'll sanitize everything. If I need to return something to the fridge, I clean it first. If there's a spill, I wipe it down. But for things like chopping boards, empty packaging, or condiments, I usually leave them on the counter until the end. To me, they're not urgent, unless we're only aiming for a picture-perfect kitchen mid-meal. One evening, though, She got really snappy because I left the cutting board out next to the pans. She said, "It's not that hard to clean while you cook." I thought, fine. Whatever. So, the next time I cooked, I followed her instructions to the letter. Need to open a can of sauce? Better wash and dry the opener before moving on. Garlic clove hits the floor? Time to scrub the entire kitchen. Spot a bit of char on the stove? Degrease the whole thing? You get the idea. 3 hours later, the kitchen was spotless, absolutely gleaming, but I hadn't even boiled water for pasta. The sauce ingredients weren't even touched. By the time my wife had put our toddler to bed, she came in and asked, "Where's dinner?" I replied, "Haven't started yet. Still need to clean the fridge. There's a stain under the tomato tray." She just went straight to bed. I still cooked and packed her lunch afterward, though. Since then, no more complaints about my system. Honestly, I admire OP for still making his wife's lunch after that. It shows a level of care even while making his point. And let's be real, everyone has their own style in the kitchen. There's no single right way, as long as the family gets fed and the kitchen's clean by the end of the night. Still, if someone isn't actively helping, maybe it's best they keep their opinions to themselves and let the cook do their thing. That story reminded me of another experience from years ago when I worked at McDonald's. Our location was near several schools, so most of the staff were high school kids. At the start of summer vacation, a problem popped up. Employees would go on break, then spend the whole time hanging out with friends who were still working, slowing everything down and even creating health hazards. So management set a new rule. If you were on break, you had to stay in the break room until it was over. That worked fine, until school started again. Suddenly, we didn't have enough staff during rushes, and ticket times skyrocketed. Management briefly lifted the rule, allowing people to clock back in early. But then the district manager stepped in, hated that people were skipping breaks, and reinstated the rule. Worse, he threatened that anyone who tried to work during their break would get written up or even fired. Enter malicious compliance. It was April 20th, a nightmare day for fast food. From the moment we opened, the place was slammed. So extra. Staff were pulled in from other stores. At first, everything ran smoothly despite the rush. But then my break came. Just as I sat down to eat, someone ordered 47 double quarter pounders. This was right after McDonald's had switched to making quarter pounders fresh, so it was chaos. As if that weren't enough, the drive-thru immediately got an order for 75 20-piece nugget meals. The kitchen was in full panic. Meanwhile, I was sitting comfortably, scrolling on my phone, enjoying my food. When ticket times started soaring, the district manager barged in and demanded I cut my break short. I calmly told him, "Sorry, but by your own rules, I'd be fired if I did." "What you're asking?" And I went back to my phone. A regional manager then came in and personally threatened to terminate me if I didn't help. The other employee on break panicked, clocked in early, and later got written up for it. I stayed put. The fallout was massive. The customers who placed those huge orders waited half an hour, then left with refunds worth about $150 each. Smaller orders were delayed too, and those customers received nearly $1,500 in gift cards. On top of that, around $5,000 worth of food went to waste because people abandoned their orders. The regional and district managers were reassigned, and the rule was rewritten. Employees could return early during rushes if a manager allowed it. Since I was the only one who stuck to my guns, I was rewarded with free meals and drinks until I eventually moved away. Looking back, the rule was ridiculous. And punishing OP's co-worker for helping? Even worse. Honestly, refusing one oversized order would have been smarter than upsetting hundreds of customers at once. Finally, one more short one. About 20 years ago, I was working at a gas station. One evening, a woman came in and dumped 5 or 6 handfuls of pennies on the counter, asking for her usual brand of cigarettes. Normally, cashiers would have told her to get lost, but I was in a chill mood, with nothing else to do except run the register and snack on food from the deli case. So I said, "All right, but I'll have to take other customers first. I'll count these in between." A woman came up to the counter, dropped her change, and insisted, "It's all there. I already counted it." I answered politely, "If my register comes up short, I'm the one who gets in trouble. I have to double-check it." "Sorry." Immediately, she started pacing around the store, throwing her arms dramatically as if I'd just insulted her honor. I took my time, stacking pennies into neat piles of 10, stopping whenever another customer walked in. Meanwhile, she stood near the door, huffing, groaning, and snapping at everyone who came through. I kept helping the other customers first, so none of them cared how long it took. After about 10 minutes and half a dozen interruptions, I finally reached the end. Sure enough, she was short by maybe 15 cents. That wasn't unusual. People often dipped into the take a penny, leave a penny tray to cover a small difference, especially for cigarettes. Normally, it was allowed, but this woman had sworn up and down that her money was exact, and by then I was irritated. I quietly slid the overflowing penny dish behind the counter before calling her back. "Looks like you're about 15 cents short," I told her. Her eyes darted around the counter. "Can't I just use the dish?" "Where is it?" I raised my brows, feigning confusion. "What dish?" She jabbed a finger. "There's always a dish. You took it." I waved a hand over the empty counter and said calmly, "No dish here. I'm not sure what you're talking about." That sent her into a rage. She cursed me out, stormed off without her cigarettes, and that was that. Later, my boss told me I didn't even need to count change like that. He didn't really understand why I bothered, but I just nodded and played it straight. That little episode happened about a decade ago, and I still chuckle every time I drive past the store. I've always been the quiet, rule-following type, so honestly, that was one of the only rebellious things I did as a teenager. Now, about farm life. My dad owns one, which meant I had chores whether I wanted them or not. Summers were the worst. Instead of hanging out with friends, I spent entire days in a tractor from dawn until dusk cutting alfalfa. 4 separate harvests every year. Imagine a restless teenager with ADHD stuck in one spot for 14 hours. That was me. If I hadn't been such an introvert, I probably would have snapped sooner. On the second day of harvest one summer, I'd already logged 20 hours in the tractor. Tired and frustrated, I asked Dad which field to tackle next, and when I'd finally be done. He just said, "I'll pick you up at dark." That sentence hit me hard. I fumed the rest of the day, feeling like all my free time was slipping away. When the sun set and it got darker, there was still no sign of him. My dad was notoriously late. It was almost a running joke, so I knew I'd be stuck a while. Then a thought hit me. If he hadn't picked me up yet, it must not be dark. And if it wasn't dark, I didn't need headlights, right? So I kept driving across the field, refusing to turn them on, squinting as the last light faded. The tractor left sloppy gaps, what we called shark fins, all over the place. A few here and there were normal, but I was leaving them everywhere. After about half an hour of pitch black, Dad finally showed up. I don't remember his exact words, but I told him my reasoning. Instead of scolding me, he burst out laughing. No punishment, no lecture, just laughter. Honestly, I think he was secretly a little proud of me for once. I asked him about it years later, but he didn't remember the story. I sure do. It was silly, motivated by laziness, and didn't change much in the grand scheme of things, but it was the first time I'd ever stood up to an authority figure, even in such a small way. To me, it felt like a victory. And here's another little rebellion. This time not mine, but someone else's. Growing up, cleaning was always a sore spot in their household. Nothing was ever good enough for their mom, which led to constant fights. One summer day, Mom told her teen to scrub the shared bathroom top to bottom. The chore got done, but apparently not up to Mom's impossible standards. That night, while the teen was already asleep, Mom barged in, flicked on the lights, and demanded the bathroom be cleaned properly. Exhausted, the teen begged, "I'll do it tomorrow. Just let me sleep." Mom's response, "Clean it now, or get out of my house." She probably didn't mean it, since it was something she often said, but this time the bluff was called. The teen calmly got out of bed, grabbed a backpack, hopped on a bike, and left. Still in pajamas. They rode straight to their best friend's place, where the friend's mom happily let them stay. For 2 days they hung out, went to the park, and enjoyed freedom. Then came a scheduled volunteer trip out of state, so they were gone another week. Not a single text from Mom. When they finally returned, she acted like nothing had ever happened. But something had changed. She never used the "obey or get out" line again. That quiet little act of defiance stuck, and it was enough. That's the beauty of malicious compliance. Sometimes it's petty, sometimes wholesome, but always unforgettable.